Welcome to the Eduleadership Show. I'm your host, Justin Bader, and in this episode, we'll talk about some expert guidance on kids and smartphones. We'll talk about how one teacher explains to students how over-relying on AI can stunt the development of their skills and abilities. And we'll talk about a recent video that I did on teaching grade level standards and grade level content and some of the educator responses to that. So let's get to it. First up, the New York Times has an excellent profile of the social psychologist and author and researcher Jean Twenge, and it's titled, "She Started the Debate About Kids and Phones, and Now She Wants to End It." And I've been aware of Dr. Twenge's work for a very long time, and this article has a lot of kind of personal updates from her own personal experience raising three kids who have now, gotten their own technology, and some of them are in college. And it's really interesting to see how her advice has been consistent and how the warnings that she was issuing 10 years ago or so have really held up very, very well. And one quote from the article that I wanted to share with you talks about how in 2017, she wrote an article that was warning that kids who were the first generation to basically be born with smartphones, to go through adolescence with smartphones the entire time, were experiencing higher rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness, in part because they were spending too much time on screens. And one of the things that Dr. Twenge says in that article is that sleep is a big deal. As we mentioned in a recent episode, the fact that kids are on their phones too late at night, they're on their phones in bed, has a lot to do with a lot of these negative outcomes. But in this article, as well as in her new book, which we'll try to talk about on Principal Center Radio soon, one thing that she recommends is not giving kids a smartphone until they get a driver's license. And the article really shocked me with this statistic, that the average kid gets their first smartphone at age 11. And Dr. Twenge thinks that is too young. I think that is too young. I think we've really got to delay smartphone use and certainly social media use until much later. And if you are looking for some specific recommendations for your own kids or to share with parents that you work with, Dr. Twenge has a new book out called 10 Rules for Raising Kids in a High-Tech World. So keep an eye out for that. Next up, educator Kelsey Pomeroy recently published a great little video where she talks about how she can teach students to understand what over-relying on AI can do to their developing brains and to their talents and their abilities that they're supposed to be developing through hard work in school. Let's take a look.
So imagine if you had all of them. And there will be people when you're an adult walking around with all of these colors because they spent their years growing their brain. Because remember, the only way we can grow our brains is with time and with working them out by learning. So every time you are using AI to complete an assignment that is meant to help grow your brain, to prepare you to get a leg up when you're an adult, I want you to ask, what are you giving away when you're older? Yes, you might get an A and you might get away with it on this assignment by using AI to think for you, but you just gave away your rich vocabulary. Or maybe you're giving away your ability to be creative. Logical thinking. And the more you opt out of actually learning and instead letting a computer think for you, this is what you're going to go into the world with. And I promise you that there will be other people with this, the whole rainbow. And I would gesture at the pictures and say, and in life, it is going to be much harder, if not impossible, for you to win without all of the colors. So even if your friends are doing it, even if it's easier, you must protect your sunset at all costs.
I think it's powerful to explain things in that way to students. And I've also heard the metaphor that using AI when you're supposed to be developing skills, when you're supposed to be developing by doing hard work, is like taking a forklift to the gym and just pushing a lever to lift those heavy weights up and down. If the goal is to improve, if the goal is to get stronger, if the goal is to learn, then relying on technology to do that work for us is not going to get us there. So I think it's really interesting that she's presenting this to kids and helping them understand why they should not over rely on these technologies to get their work done in school, even if it's easier, even if it saves them time. I think we've also as adults, got to put some pieces in place to actually prevent them from doing so. I think we need to make the case, we need to persuade, but we also need to have actual boundaries that stop kids from undermining their own education, just as we make education compulsory, right? You have to go to school. If you feel like sleeping in, I'm sorry, you have to go to school. We make you get out of bed and go to school in the morning. That's just our responsibility as adults. And I think when it comes to AI, we need to do the same thing and say, not only am I going to educate you and inform you about why you shouldn't over rely on these tools, because I love you, because I care about you, I am not going to let you ruin your education by over relying on these tools. And that's not to say that kids shouldn't use them at all. That's not to say there's no place for them. But we need to be careful in order to make sure that students get the education they deserve while they go through school, and don't just run the forklift as they get their education, because that's not going to actually educate them. Next up, I recently posted a video on social media talking about how we teach students who are below grade level content. Let's take a look, and then we'll examine some of the reactions from educators. How do we get kids to learn grade level content if they are below grade level in some way? I think this idea that we have to meet students where they are has gone too far. This idea that we need to differentiate everything has gone too far. Now, there are places where students truly have to have prerequisite knowledge. They have to have prerequisite skills in order to do the next thing, right? And I think math often works that way, that it is very difficult to learn the current thing if you didn't learn the previous thing. But I've had some great conversations with math educators who say that's actually even not strictly true in math. We can always teach grade level content and do some things to scaffold and to support and to catch up to students who are not at grade level. But I think what we have to never do is fail to teach grade level content. That's, I think, the biggest trap for kids who are below grade level, is because they're below grade level, they get taught below grade level and they never get taught on grade level, so they never have any chance of getting caught up. But I think this is a really difficult issue because we want to meet students where they are, and I don't think we should let go of that completely. I think there is a noble intention there to meet students' actual needs, but I think we have to remember that we also have an obligation as educators to teach grade level standards. Let me know what you think of this challenge. I think one thing that does not work that a lot of schools have tried to do is they've tried to emphasize differentiation. They've tried to solve this problem with some verbal sleight of hand by saying, well, if the teacher would just differentiate, then that would meet the needs of students who are ready for grade level material. It would allow students who are not ready for grade level material to access it, and it would fill in what they need that they are missing from previous grade levels. I don't think that works. And the simple reason that it doesn't work is time, right? There is not time to teach the current content and previous year's content in the classroom. No matter how skilled the teacher is, no matter how great they are at working with groups and supplementing and doing all the magic that we want them to do, at the end of the day, what that idea of differentiation is asking is magic. It is not really possible to teach the current material and previous year's material in the amount of time that you're given just to teach the current material. So I think part of the answer has to be extra support. It has to be extra people. It has to be extra time. It has to be either after school tutoring or pull out tutoring during another time during the school day, so that students are continuing to get their grade level content from their regular teacher, but someone else at some other time is giving them what they are missing as well. And teachers and other educators in the comments made some great points. This one talked about early intervention, that if we can do some things in the primary grades to prevent those gaps from forming and close them as quickly as possible, that is going to reduce the size of those gaps a great deal in the later grades. If we can get every kid reading in kindergarten and first grade, we are going to have a much smaller problem with them being years and years behind when they get to middle school and high school. This comment talked about reading ability in math, and there was some good discussion about helping students access math even if their reading skills are far below grade level, and some discussion of accommodations and reading questions to the students. And I think there are difficult questions here. There are difficult challenges around access, and certainly some very fair points that if students are lacking foundational content, they need something. What I think they don't need, though, is slower teaching and not teaching the grade level content. They need extra teaching and extra support. There were also some comments about retention And I think this teacher makes some great points about not being able to teach any other grade levels content other than, the grade that they're actually teaching. If I'm a sixth grade math teacher, I can teach sixth grade math. I can teach sixth grade reading if I'm a reading teacher, but I can't teach everything else that they've ever missed. So someone else has to do that, or the student has to repeat the grade. And I think we've got to face some really difficult dilemmas there. One thing that I've seen some interesting research on is the idea that when states impose retention rules, like if you are not reading on grade level by third grade, you get held back. It doesn't actually result in that many students getting held back, but it does result in schools figuring out how to make sure that every kid meets that standard and doesn't get held back. Because when we create that problem, when schools realize, oh, we're going to have to tell families your kid's not going on to the next grade unless we get this kid to read. Well, that creates a sense of urgency for the school, and that creates a sense of urgency for the family. And honestly, I wouldn't think that would work. Like, I would think people would be trying as hard as they could already, but there's evidence out there, maybe we'll talk about this on an upcoming episode, that does seem to work. It does seem to make a difference. Now, I said in the video that I had talked to some math educators who advocate for teaching grade level content even to students who are far below grade level, who have gaps. And John Mighton is the person that I had in mind. He's got a book called All Things Being Equal, and he also has some math curriculum called Jump Math that is definitely worth checking out. He spoke with me a while back for Principal Center Radio, and he talked about his approach to reviewing and recapping and filling in missing knowledge so that students can still benefit from the grade level instruction that they're getting, even if they have gaps. So check out that interview with John Mighton on Principal Center Radio. Principal Center Radio is my podcast that I've been doing for over a decade, where I brought you more than 450 interviews with authors and thought leaders within and beyond education. And you can find more about that at principalcenter.com/radio. That's it for this episode of the Eduleadership Show. I'm Justin Bader, and I'll see you next time.